being self-employed is an illusion. It's not something big, and it sold me one bowl for 50 euros. I started to feel a bit like a caged animal. I didn't enjoy someone else deciding over my time.
Yeah.
I was like calculating how many hours that there are still left to do. It was like I was just living for the weekend. I started to get sick very often. If you don't have the lows, then it's not going up. In the end, it's just healthy. I cannot really tell you what got the idea into my head. There was a voice telling me that this is like a really, really good idea. I put all my savings into woodturning. I haven't tried it once, and it's basically the first thing I start to think about in the morning, and the last thing I think about in the evening.
Which is so cool, yeah.
Yeah, but don't tell my wife.
Welcome back to Artist Insights. I'm Elena, creative nomad, and we are very much on the Bavarian countryside. I'm not kidding, we even have an amazing view on the Watzmann. My interview partner for today's episode has a really interesting story about how he found the creative job that he feels excited about. And you might have seen him before, because Franz Keilhofer is not only interested in working with wood, he's also a model and shouted in a hardcore punk band back in the day. Hi Franz. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Okay Franz, in your own words, who are you and what are you doing for a living?
So my name is Franz Keilhofer, and I'm a wood turner under the label of Gingerwood Franz Keilhofer. And for what concerns wood turning, I do mostly wooden bows, but I also do things like sculptures, vases, or smaller accessories. In the end, it's mostly wooden bows.
Before you started wood turning and went freelance in 2010, you worked as a mold technician, got your, and this is a very long word, general higher education entrance qualification. In Germany you would just say Abitur, and studied engineering science till the second semester.
Yes.
What was your life back then? Why did you decide to do these things, and how did you feel mentally?
That's a question that definitely needs kind of a long answer. When I look back, so my life was always like, I always opted for a certain path. So when I did middle school, or as it's called in Germany, Realschule, I always was sure that I want to do an apprenticeship first, and then after the apprenticeship do my A-level exams.
Why did you want to do the apprentice?
Yeah, because if you have a finished apprenticeship, then there is something you can always go back to. It's only 3 years, but this is something that no one can take away from you.
Yeah.
And it's also nice to have, after 10 years of school, to have 3 years break. And it also gives you a good idea how it is to work. And also maybe you will enjoy school again much more after you work for 3 years. Yeah, and then during my apprenticeship, the plan was always to go back to school, do my A-levels, and then go to university and study science engineering.
So you already knew where you wanted to go?
Yes, but in hindsight, maybe it was just that if someone asks me that I can tell them what I want to do. I cannot tell now that this is really what I wanted to do, but it is easy when you have like, you choose a path and then follow. The thing started when I started my apprenticeship. I felt more and more like someone else is deciding over my time. So it was like, I have to go there, I have to be there at 7, and I have to stay there until 5, 6, 7 p.m.
Very fixed times, okay.
During that time I started to feel a bit like a caged animal. Okay. It was like 5 minutes into my job, and I really enjoyed what I did, but like 9 o'clock I was like calculating how many hours that there are still left to do. It was like I was just living for the weekend. And it was like when I went to work, then it was just like, when will it finish?
Like so, typical 9 to 5 and then...
Yes, but and there are people that can do this.
Yeah.
And I always, being self-employed is nice, but if you're able to do a 9 to 5 job without going crazy, then that's also a good thing.
It is a very common thing, right? So people are very used to 9 to 5, okay, and living for the weekend.
Yeah, and if you can do that, that's just fine.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the work but I didn't enjoy someone else deciding over my time.
Yeah.
And you always had to rely on other people before or after you. So if the one before you didn't do his job properly, then it was like you have to deal with it. And if someone after you didn't do his tasks well, you were like one part in a big system and you couldn't really have influence. But when I finished my apprenticeship and went back to school, it's called like Berufsoberschule, so you can do your A-levels after your apprenticeship there. It got worse and worse. During the first year it was still somehow okay, but in the second year I felt more and more caged. It was like I didn't want to go there, but I had to be there, and I was just counting hours, but I still didn't really realize what's happening. I didn't feel good. I felt really churned up on the inside, but became more and more tired in my body. And so I started to get sick very often. So I got a chronic throat infection. I think in the second year on Berufsoberschule, I was like half of the days I was ill. And I somehow managed to pass with okay grades, but it was like something is wrong. And I got to see my doctor pretty often, but he couldn't find. They tested me for cancer.
I was just about to ask, what did your doctor say? Because sometimes doctors are just like, relax, nothing is going on, and just like...
Yeah, he did a proper examination, and of course you start with like physical things first. So he wanted to make sure that I don't have. They tested me for blood cancer, for example. So the things that are important that you can say, okay, that's not the case. When I finished school, it got better. This was like the first time when I got kind of an idea that it's maybe not only physical, that's also psychological. And then I started studying. We have to go back a few years again. So I was kind of a loner in school, so I didn't have many friends until like the 9th grade. But I was very interested in school. I always enjoyed science, and this is why I decided for scientific study. Basically all of my self-esteem was based on being smarter than others. And because I was basically the only one who was interested in school, I was good in school. There came this misconception that I'm smart, but actually I was just interested. And when I started at university, I really got to know that I'm not smart. So I'm interested in things, and that's something really good, and then that can make up a lot of things. But then you come to a point where you need that kind of scientific intelligence to solve certain problems. And then still a lot of my self-esteem was based on being smarter than others. But on university I got to learn that I'm in the best case average. This was like taken away from me, and I saw people with very little effort being much better than I. Back in the days I still thought like if you work hard enough, then everyone can make everything. So this is the mindset of many people. I went to the university, I studied for long hours every day, 6 hours after university. So I studied and tried to like get things into my head.
Basically a kind of hustle culture.
Yes, but the pressure was not like from the outside, it was more from the inside. And then I started to get really tired. At some point my body really wanted to sleep 12, and during the night my body wanted to stay awake. My day-night rhythm started to slowly switch. And then I went back to see my doctor. In the second semester I had to stop because I was so tired and I couldn't even read a sentence. At the end of the sentence I didn't know what
you just read.
So it was clear that I have to stop, and there was still this kind of idea that it's maybe a physical problem. We did more testing. And then at some point my doctor asked me and he was very careful.
How did you feel?
No, he was really careful, but because I didn't feel bad. I always felt mentally somehow okay. It was still like I was very nervous on the inside, I was very tired, but I didn't really have negative thoughts. And then at some point he asked like, would it be okay to see a neurologist? And I was like, yes, because
Yes.
at that point I just wanted to know what's happening. Then I went to the neurologist, and I think it didn't took her 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and then she said, "Oh, you have depression." For her, it was very obvious. Then I started getting medication.
How did you felt with the medication?
When you get like medication for mental illness, it always takes a few weeks until you really notice if it works or not.
But you had a good reaction to it?
I had no reactions.
No
and
reaction,
that was
okay.
kind of a problem.
Okay.
And at the same time, I started talking therapy. Basically, the idea is that you get medicine to help you through your like daily life until the talking therapy or whatever kind of therapy you're doing kicks in.
Yeah.
So it basically helps you to survive. And the problem really was that whatever she got me, I only felt, in German it's called Nebenwirkungen.
Side effects.
Side effects,
Side effects.
I only felt side effects,
Yeah.
and with like that kind of medicine, the side effects aren't the best ones. I got a new medicine, waited 4 weeks, and then we found out, okay, it doesn't work, and then I had to wait like another 4 weeks for the next medicine. And then at some point she was again really careful, she asked me to like, do you want to see a psychiatric clinic? And I was like, yes, because first I don't have like prejudices for being mentally ill, so it was always okay for me, and I could really accept that. And I think she was kind of surprised, because she thought like
that you were so open to it.
Yes, but again at that point it was just like, I just want to know.
When you know that something is off and you just want to know what's going on. And
There are different like ways you can do that. You can go there for the full day and then go back home. For me it was clear that I needed like the environment of the clinic, that I'm able to concentrate, not going back home, because back home is also all the things that you maybe don't want to have around you like all the time.
that's also that is triggering you in
Yes,
some way.
yes, exactly. Then I went full-time to the clinic, and it took the doctors 6 weeks to find a medicine. I think at one point I got tranquilizers, because they wanted to try to make me sleep. And they were like, go straight to bed, because maybe you will just like fall and sleep wherever you stand.
Okay.
And I was awake the whole night. And then after like 5 weeks, they tried a medicine that was off-label use. So it wasn't meant for depression, it was meant for schizophrenia. It was more like this kind of direction.
When your personality is switching.
Yeah,
pretty
not only
intensely.
that, but if there is a malfunction of your personality. And then they tried that, and the first day was the first night in months that I could sleep.
Wow.
It was
okay.
like really, so this is working.
Okay.
And then when they went up with the dose, it really turned out that this is the right medicine for me.
Wow, okay.
And as my day and night rhythm like switched back to normal, I got more and more energy. I felt kind of invigorated, felt like I could do things again. And then like 1 week later, I was able to leave. I could start healing. In the end, it took about 3 years to get back to somehow normal.
So you stayed in the clinic for
6 weeks.
6 weeks, okay.
And after 5 weeks,
Okay.
and they found the right medicine. And then I could handle my daily life. Before that, on a good day, I was able to go from my bed to the couch, on a very good day to the shower in between, and then back to bed. And then I somehow had some energy at last. And this was when I discovered woodturning as a thing. When I was in the clinic, I met many people with a lot of problems. Somehow they were also like the most sane people I met. So they were the most normal people that I came across for a very long time. And one of them was a hobby woodturner. So and then I was like, okay, I couldn't work, I couldn't like go to school, and I had plenty of time, but not a lot of energy. And so I was looking for something that I'm physically and mentally able to do. Yeah, and then basically I put all my savings into woodturning. So I bought a small machine, some tools, and I haven't tried it once when the stuff arrived. So I was like, okay, this better makes fun. Or I just like it's putting everything on a horse that you don't know. Basically, the first day that I stood on the lathe, that's the machine that you're seeing in the background, not this particular machine. It was like I couldn't walk up the stairs without being totally exhausted, but I somehow could be in the workshop for 10 hours straight without feeling exhausted. This is the thing. I thought maybe that's a road I can follow. And at the same time I had no money at all, so it was clear that I need something like to substitute my life. So I also started teaching maths.
This is when you started, okay.
Yes, after I started woodturning, I pretty quickly got the idea of maybe I can find a job in woodturning. But it was clear from the beginning that there is not much money in woodturning, so I needed something for a stable income. And like kids that are bad in school is like one of the most stable incomes that you can imagine. So
it also goes a little bit full circle with you being in school and the whole story, and now you can teach it. And
looking back, when I realized I'm not that smart, I also realized that I knew how to learn things, because if you're very smart, then you can come to a point where you struggle when you realize that it's not enough to just be smart, that you have to learn. If you used to learn, and if you're not good at school, then it's easy to understand why others are not good in school. It's easier to emphasize how people feel than when they don't understand math.
I think this is also when people say, this is just a talented artist, for example, when people saying that, because talented is a tricky word sometimes, because talented just means that the person puts the effort into it. I mean, sometimes, of course, people are better at something, but they put the work in it.
It needs a lot of things, and also privilege is certainly a big part, but I think we will cover that later.
Yeah. You already said it, so you had an aha moment when you were in the clinic. When you both talked about the whole wood turning thing, what kind of stuff did you talk about? He told you about what he's doing and you were like, oh, this sounds very interesting. Or
for many people, wood turning is something like a craft that's dying out. But that's actually not the case. So in like the German-speaking region, I think there are between 50,000 and 100,000 people who do wood turning for a hobby. And especially in my area, that's something people know. So that's a craft like every kid knows about. So I knew what wood turning is.
Yeah.
And what fascinated me, if you're a carpenter, you need many very expensive machines, at least the usual carpenter. And as a wood turner, you basically just need some tools and a wood turning lathe, and in the best case, a saw or a bandsaw, and you can start. You can start if you like invest $2,000. Then you can start with somehow okay gear, and it's not like if you want to become a carpenter, it's like you can add
way more.
Another like digit. Is digit the right word? I don't know.
I have no idea.
So we're speaking of like 20,000 or
that's a little bit way more.
So it was like a very easy entry, and this is also a reason why many people start wood turning as a hobby.
Ah, interesting.
And there was, back in the days, people wanted to learn a craft, but parents told them that they have to learn something proper, becoming a banker. All those people are now in retirement age. They like revisit this kind of childhood dream, and then it's easy to start wood turning because it's so easy. You need a little space, you need not the biggest amount of money, and then you can do many different things. And so it's very popular. You also started for that reason. I cannot really tell you what got the idea into my head that this could be something for me. It was like just somewhere back in my head there was a voice telling me that this is like a really, really good idea. But you know, this kind of voice is not always the one you should listen to. In the end, when it showed that I really enjoy wood turning and I also like had the capabilities of being of wood turn, I was really relieved. Like, okay, it was the right thing. But it was like coin flip situation.
If it would have been way more expensive, do you think that you still would have taken the jump?
No, I don't think so, because we are not wealthy. So we have a farm, we have a lot of space, and this is really a good and important thing, but that's not something you can feed from. Long story short, if it would have cost more money, I never would have started woodturning.
But it's really good that you already did the calculation beforehand, because me, for example, when I jumped into, okay, I want to be an illustrator and online store and all that stuff, I didn't know what's about to come, and I really thought, for example, all the illustrators that I saw on YouTube, for example, I really thought, oh, they can just live off from their online store, easy peasy, stuff like that. And when I got into it, I was like, oh, hell no, this is not how it works. I had to do the extra rounds, and I'm sometimes still doing the extra rounds, so it's really good when you calculate it beforehand.
I think it's good and bad, because sometimes people wouldn't start if they did the calculation first.
Exactly. Sometimes you just need to go blind into it and just make failures and...
Yeah, but I think in your industry, but also in my industry, people don't really talk about the downs. Woodturning is like the thing that I want to do, and it's basically the first thing I start to think about in the morning, and the last thing I think about in the evening.
Which is so cool,
Yeah, but don't tell my wife. It's really cool, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't take from you.
That is such a good sentence. Oh my god, this is so good.
I sometimes pay a pretty high price for what I'm doing. In my special case, it's also like there's no way back. So I know that I cannot work in a 9-to-5 job. Give me half a year and I'm back to like the lowest point.
Oh my god, I remember the exact
So it's also like it's what I want to do, but it's also the only thing I can do.
Or you need it also for the healing purpose.
Yes, or for staying healthy.
Yeah, Oh my god, I'm feeling this so much. This is why I wanted to do this interview with you.
And this is really something difficult, because it's not that dramatic, but your life also depends on this. So my life depends on being a woodturner, or at least like having a good, healthy life is also related to me being a woodturner. If you are having like a job that doesn't earn you too much money, then it's even more complicated, because it's what you want to do, but it's also what you need to do, but it's also like what you shouldn't do because it doesn't earn you enough money. It's kind of difficult, but at least when I started, I did a lot of teaching, like 40 hours woodturning, 20 hours of teaching. It always somehow worked.
I actually wanted to ask this later, but we're talking about it now, so I will take this in now. Because Franz also has a YouTube channel, by the way. I will link everything down below. You also were talking about the whole money fluctuating situation, also with your parents, with the farm, and also with your wife, Nadine. Do you want to share a little bit more about that? Because we were already talking about, not making that much money.
Yeah, so basically I make things that no one needs. It's like really luxury items. Of course it's nice to have a well-made wooden salad bowl, but that's not something that you really need.
And you have IKEA and other places to go and stuff like that.
Which is okay. Maybe we have to like do again a very deep dive.
Do it!
When I started woodturning, becoming self-employed as a woodturner, I was always like, it's important to really work hard. And I still think that it's important to really, really work hard, especially in this kind of craft. But I also thought like hard work can get you everywhere.
Sorry for interrupting you, but it's really like that. You can have the most amazing wooden bowls, but for example, your marketing is a shit show.
Yes.
It won't pay you anything.
Yeah, and also what turned out, if your marketing is really good, it also doesn't help you a lot. In the beginning I thought, okay, I just have to work harder. So whenever it doesn't like work out the way I expected, so I made like a new collection of bowls. I thought, okay, maybe this is it.
Yeah.
And then it just didn't sell. So, and I thought like, okay, I just have to work harder. And then I thought like, okay, I have to do like a crafts fair, like the big ones. And it also didn't work out. Then I had like really good publications. Basically, I think since I started, I had about 800 publications.
Holy!
I think there is not a single media in Germany that didn't cover me at some point. And there was one year where I had like 600 publications just in a few months. I was like the face of Bavaria for
Yeah.
a year.
You were promoting traveling to Bavaria and...
Yeah, no, basically I was just promoting myself, and with that I was like gaining interest in Bavaria. This also didn't work. And I still thought like maybe I just have to work harder. But then at some point, and this was one of the most important steps in my career, I realized that working hard gets you to a certain point, but then you have to be a bit more easy on yourself. Without working hard, it gets you nowhere.
And people will notice as well.
Yes. But you shouldn't think that working harder will necessarily get you there. And people are still like, with all the coaching and kind of like alpha, toxic, whatever individuals that you have, they will always tell you like, you just have to work harder. You have to, just like be a high performer. And if you don't make it, then you're a low performer. So
it's okay that you're a low performer.
At some point I started to realize, okay, I basically did everything that was possible. And I many times like went one step too far. I came in the area where I noticed that it starts to feed from my mental health. And the good thing is, since I did therapy and I was successful in my therapy, I noticed, okay, now I'm going into a direction that's not good for me. But I still like went there. I started to realize, okay, the problem is not that I'm not working hard. The problem is not that I don't have privilege, because I had privilege, because we didn't have money, but we had space. Having a workshop in your own like house.
Also the wood, right?
Yeah, some of the wood is also like from our own forest. So the problem I figured out really is that the market is just incredibly small. There is only a very limited amount of people that are willing to buy a bowl. And it's not like someone who was not in the mood of paying $150 for a wooden bowl. Just because they see you on prime time on TV doesn't mean that they are like, oh yeah, that's something I probably need. So this is always people that had it like somewhere back in their head. This could be something like someday, and when they then see you, it's like, okay, I gotta get it from him. I realized at a certain point can start to be like easy on myself. Okay, you did what you can do, and now like let's go to the lake and have a day off. And this was again one of the most important things, so that I realized when it's enough.
So you also thought about your target audience, and you came to the realization, okay, it's not that the person is hyper focused on getting something from you. It's more like, okay, they are thinking about what they would like to have in their home or so, and then they, I don't know, see an interview of you or so, and then they say, okay, that is a really nice guy, and he makes really cool stuff, I will get it from him.
Being at the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
But still, I was at the right places at the right times, and it was still like not enough. I always say like at a certain point I reached everyone who is might interested, but then it's basically impossible to gain sales beyond that. For example, when I started like working with TV stations, I was like, okay, when they publish this documentary, then I better be on my computer just to managing orders. And I had primetime documentaries that were like 45 minutes just about me and my craft.
Wow.
At the best, as I said, at prime time. And I had like one sale. So I sold like a bowl for 50 euros.
Wow. Okay.
And I spent 2 days of filming.
Yeah, I know. Oh God, I know this. Yeah, you put so much effort and so much work and love and everything into this thing, and then it's like maybe one person shows up and like, hey.
That's also something that they always tell you. Of course, they don't want to pay you money because you're getting views. They are always like, okay, we're getting content, you get the reach. But this is not how it works.
No.
And I learned from that. If it's not something that I always wanted to do, I'm like, okay, but you have to at least pay me something in compensation.
Because this is your time, and time is
expensive.
Yeah.
I rather spend time with my wife than with it.
You had enough reach in that.
Yeah, and I had so much reach, so much publicity that I knew that it doesn't get me like further. When I first started, it was like, okay, better be what they want you to be, because otherwise they maybe don't want to make the documentary. And after the first one or two, which were like smaller things, I realized that if I'm not myself, it's not worth it, because first, sales are not really going up, but I don't feel good at the same time, because I'm going away from like comfort zone. And this was something really good, but because when the really big publications started, I already was at a point where I would say, so okay, either we do it the way I'm okay with, or you can just straight go home. But this is really something that you need to learn. But I think we're far off your question. But in the end, it turned out that I worked hard enough. More and harder work doesn't get me further. And I was at a point where when I had free time, I didn't know what to do with myself, because I just wasn't used to have free time. And then life started to be a bit easier. Nowadays, I'm good with deciding how much work is enough in terms of how far it will get me.
In terms of your family and your wife, how was it for you to ask for help or to be okay with getting this help?
Yeah, from my parents, they supported me in a way that was really easy to accept for me. I asked my dad if I can get this room to build a workshop, and he just said yes. He was not like, oh, are you sure that it's worth it?
He wasn't questioning it.
No, he was just blindly supporting me.
That's very nice.
When I had a Christmas exhibition and I needed someone who is buying glühwein, my dad was the first one to just say, yeah, when I'm on the way back from work, I will get you some.
Oh, that's so sweet.
My mom would bake Christmas biscuits for the exhibition. They supported me in giving me their time. That was never a problem for me to accept. It felt like that's just what a family does.
Yeah, really nice gestures. And,
what was a bit more difficult was when it comes to my wife, because I think in a relationship most people have the idea that both parties can contribute the same amount of money. If you're working full-time, my wife, she's self-employed, she works 60 hours, I work 60 hours, so you think you can put the same amount of money into it, but it turned out that it's not the way it works. My business pays for itself. No one needs to put money into my business to keep it running. But if we are going on vacation, we are not going on my money. I think it's difficult because we have this traditional idea of the husband is bringing home the money. Although I never felt that way, it's just somehow almost in your DNA that you at least want to be 50% of the thing. We are both living in a modern relationship where it's not that important who is responsible for what. We are working the same hours and she is a way better earner than me. But it's also I do stuff around the house. In the end it evens out. It doesn't make sense to have a list to write it all down and I did that so you have to do this. I don't think this is how a good relationship can work. We are not counting things, but in the end I think we both feel that we contribute the same, even if it's not the same in numbers. We have different personalities and also different things that we can care for. It turned out that it's no problem at all.
Did you ever experience imposter syndrome or anything like that in that matter?
No.
Not? Okay.
No. I knew that this question was coming up and I talked to my wife. I don't even know how it feels.
Okay.
I obviously know what imposter syndrome is. I'm pretty realistic about what I'm capable of and what not. And I know what I can do and what I can. My self-employment gives me the possibility to do what I can, or at least what I somehow able to do. I never question myself. I know what I can do. I know what others can do. I know where I'm good at. Actually, imposter syndrome doesn't make sense to me. I just cannot relate, but of course I can understand other people. It doesn't mean that I'm very overconfident, it's just I'm realistic.
Wow. So you never ask yourself, oh my gosh, I don't know, you're meeting another person who's also woodturner and I don't know, they make way more money and you're how do they do that? Oh man, and I can't afford my vacation, something like that.
It's sometimes, of course, with social media, then you see, for me, it's people from other crafts. And this is sometimes hard, but it also makes it easy, because if it's not your craft, there are a few like ceramic artists that sell the work from 6 months in 5 minutes. And this is sometimes hard to see, but there is just the market. And I don't have this market, so I don't need like to be hard on myself and say like, why aren't I as good? It's just like more, I also do nice things, so why doesn't it work for me? When I started wood turning, and then that was the only thing where it maybe was a bit different. There are not this many wood turners in my area. It was like just seeing pictures online. It was like no chance I will ever be that good. But then I went out for like community events and fairs. Since there are so many hobby wood turners, there are this kind of things where they gather, where they exchange, and they always need people who show them things. And I was a demonstrator for wood turning for a long time. When you go out and see other people's work, then you realize that they put their pants on also just one leg at a time. I think in Germany we say when they cook, they also just use water. So when I had the first thing in my hands, it was like, it's not that perfect. On the picture, it always looks nice, but if you like have it in your hands, turn it around, and I was like, okay, that's something that I also can do.
And I think I also made the experiences when I don't know, online you see, in my case, for example, I see illustrators and I'm like, wow, what an insanely beautiful work. They must make a good amount of money, I don't know, thoughts like this. And then I meet these people and they sit in front of me and they're like, I'm not even sure if I want to continue this. Or they tell me that they don't even make really enough money or something like that. And I'm like, what? I only see what's going on online, and you have this whole other picture of the person in front of you. And it's just like, no, it's just social media.
For me, it was always a bit more obvious that it's hard for everyone. Just I couldn't judge the quality of the work because it was only on pictures. And I think it's the same for you. So when you always see the finished illustrations, you don't know the struggle that's happening in between. And I'm pretty sure that there are many people that really struggle, or they have someone who like helps them with getting inspiration or whatever. So there is so much happening before you see the finished product, but you're never part of that. Realizing that was basically the first key moment, and it was pretty early in my career, just a few months after I started being a hobby. So I started as a hobby woodturner and then became self-employed 2 years later, and it was like very early. So I never had the idea building up that other people are so much better, because I could see their work and I could see them working. And again, I still don't really know how it feels to feel like an imposter.
I wish I could say that. We were already talking about 9-to-5 jobs and being self-employed and so on. I'm curious, what are your personal perks of, in your opinion, the perks of being self-employed compared to working in a 9-to-5 job?
Being self-employed is an illusion. You keep telling yourself that you like decide when you start working, that you decide what you want to do and all that kind of stuff. And it's true to a certain point. But in the end, you have to rely on other people when it comes to selling your stuff. The good thing is I have full control. One of the things that I struggled most of my life before I started woodturning was I didn't feel self-efficient. So the lack of self-efficacy was always a problem to me. In my apprenticeship, I didn't feel like what I do really makes a change. And I also didn't feel like I really have control over my own life. I was basically just reacting, but I wanted to act. And that's also something when you have depression, when you have mental illness, you always feel like you're just reacting to things, and you really want to start acting again. Basically, you feel like a small gear in a big gearbox. And that's really something that changed with being self-employed. I cut down the tree, I do all the things that it needs to make a bowl, and then I take the picture of the finished bowl. Everything is in my hands. And if I do a good job, then it's good, and if I do a bad job, then it's not so good. But I don't have to rely on someone else doing a good thing. I have control over the full process, and I can, in theory, decide on which days when I want to start and when I want to finish. This is the part where you really have control and where you really work for yourself. But then comes the point where you have to sell your things. Of course, you're still self-employed, but then the control is not on your side again. You can do good work, and this for sure helps. But if there is not someone coming to my workshop and buying a bowl, then it's all for nothing. And this is the best thing about being self-employed is also the worst thing. You have this kind of illusion that you're free and all this kind of stuff, but at the same time you have to rely stronger on others, on your customers, that you have to when you're having a 9-to-5 job.
Freedom is a big word in that matter.
Yeah.
I also always thought, okay, if I'm self-employed, then I'm free and something. I mean, of course, there is more freedom to it, but still, you're also kind of working for others in a way. I also still think about I'm more free when I'm self-employed. This is still in my mind.
And I think it's true still. But the thing is, the grass is greener before you start. I know when I don't want to go to work tomorrow, I just don't have to. I will still do it because I enjoy my work and I have to get things done. But there is the option of saying, no, I don't want to do this today. And this is what makes the difference for me. So there is no one calling me, where are you? So it's just me. At the pretty early stage, I decided that I want to become a brand. I wanted people to come to my workshop because they like what I do and not because I do what they like. Sometimes people come and say, oh, I saw a picture of a bowl. Can you make me this kind of bowl? And I'm like, no. I have a shop with 500 bowls that you can choose from. If there is one that you like, then it's good. But I won't make you a copy of someone else's work. From the beginning, I never did something that I didn't enjoy. When I don't like the design, I don't make it. And this is something that you really have to want to afford. And this is something that not everyone can afford.
Especially at the beginning.
Yes, but now it's paying off. Now people buy my work because they especially want to have something from me. And this is what helped me to become a brand. I think as an illustrator, it's more specific style that you have.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, for me, it's also a mixture. I'm also doing YouTube and stuff like that. So Ellstration is not only about illustration, it's also about me as a brand.
Yeah.
So.
But if you have a certain idea of who you are and what you want to do, it's easier to become a brand. So this was always the goal for me. Becoming a brand is more difficult at the beginning because you limit your range to things that you want to do, but it also pays off because it's way more sustainable.
And also people don't know you at the beginning. It's just
yes.
just this person.
You have to do good work and rely that people notice that. Also with my kind of stuff, I'm not only selling a wooden bowl, I sell a kind of lifestyle. Some people just want to have a wooden bowl, but many people, they are in a 9-to-5 job. They want to do something with their own hands. They have deep inside this urge to do something. But most of the time it's enough for them to have something from someone who does what they want to do. They projecting their dream on what I'm doing. And I often hear the phrase, you're living my dream.
Yeah.
So
I've heard that also.
And I always say, I'm pretty sure that's not your
dream.
When they have this wooden bowl, they have the smell of my workshop. Even if they have never been in my workshop, there starts a movie inside their heads. They're seeing me, they see wood shavings flying around. Yeah, this is what it needs to sell a bowl.
I think it's with every purchase we make.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do when you sell something is to tickle the emotions, the feelings of the buyer. Yeah. Even for me, when I'm purchasing something and I'm very much into minimalism and things like that, I pretty carefully think about, do I really need this? And remind myself of it. But also, of course, it stands for something.
Yeah.
Of course, it's something that you have, like you said, you have this little movie in your head, and it's like, oh, when I get this, then magically this and this will happen. I don't know, I have no idea, but this is how we as human beings work.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even the truth.
Yeah.
But it's like what people imagine, and the good thing, and that cost me a lot, is that it's actually reality when it comes to my kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I have people going into my workshop and they are like, it's like in the TV. So it's really like that. And
and
like,
this is the best thing you can hear.
Yeah.
Then you know, okay, you're yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
And you're authentic.
Yeah. Authentic, that was the word.
So and this is also something that costs you. So being not authentic helps you to gain clicks, helps you to like.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we talked about that before. That's the easy way.
Mm-hmm.
Being authentic also means being yourself, and it also means like not everybody likes what is you. So when you're authentic, then critic on your work is also always critic on you. So it's not that easy to be authentic, but again, it paid off, especially if you want to be a brand, and a brand that people rely on. And I had many offers. There are a lot of companies that want to do influencer marketing with me. I think that's the industry where the most money is at the moment, or one of the industries. Mm-hmm. And it's basically, they always just have like shitty things. I cannot tell people that this is a good tool. You
also can say, okay, but I will be honest.
Yes, but it's expensive to be, or at least it's not expensive, but honesty doesn't get you any money in the world of influencing. In the end,
it depends.
Yes, but on the short run.
Yeah.
So on the long run, it of course pays off.
Yeah, if you want to make the money that a lot of influencers, the big money, then...
But if you want to be in 10 or 20 years, if want people still to like rely on your opinion, there is a signature tool line that a company sells for me. It earns me some passive income. So
which is really good.
Yeah, it only works because people trust in me. I didn't like get the $2,000 for the influencer job, but I will sell my tools for the next 20 years because people really trust in me. But you have to be able to afford it. And I did things that I did because I needed the money at that point. But it was still things that I could somehow justify in front of myself. But, people are sometimes pretty flexible when it comes to things they are willing to do or not. I once turned down a 10,000 euro job because I didn't feel it. Yeah,
but I totally get that. I've heard that from some other people as well.
At the same time, there are people that abusing their power.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's a very bad thing. But there are always people that want something so badly that they are willing to go further than they should do. Again, so I want to be really clear, that doesn't excuse the use of power. You can say this kind of actor or actress, they couldn't be successful in the industry if they would have spoken out. But if they're not at some point someone starts to say like, no, I don't feel this.
Yeah.
This is not me and this is not okay, then nothing will ever change. And it's costly. So it cost me a lot of money to like be myself. But if we want things to change, then we have to speak out whatever it costs. It's always a bit harder for me when people will like, oh, he or she couldn't do different because otherwise it would have become difficult for them. And I get it, but this is not how things will change. Being self-employed is good and hard at the same time. And as I said, I became a brand. I put a little something of me in everything that I make. And this is basically the hardest thing, because sometimes I make like a series of work and I'm very, very self-critical. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, okay, this is really good.
Yeah, I know where this is going. Yeah.
And 5 years later, I open a box with all of those 30 pieces are still there. This is the hardest thing. Sometimes you're so proud and then no one likes what you're doing. And I think this is also like the most emotional things for many creators and makers. The most difficult thing about being self-employed, aside from the money, is that you have to be mentally really stable. Because otherwise, this is some kind of pain. It really hurts you. And if you're not somehow stable, that's not something that you should do. You will be disappointed. Your feelings will get hurt and you have to deal with that. And I learned to bear that, and I'm pretty good in the meantime. Just it's a chip on my shoulder that I can shake easily now. But it was a process.
I was just about to ask, how often did you reach the point where you said, okay, I'm done?
Never.
Never?
No.
Wow. Okay.
I knew that I can continue and I could continue, but it still felt bad. So I was really like feeling the pain, but at the same moment I knew I'm so realistic that I'm not like I can continue and then I can continue. So if I'm able to do something, I know that I can do it. But it's still, you're feeling like shit. It was still like, just keep going. As a woodturner, it's hard to make something that is easily to be identified as your work. One of the most difficult things is to finding your own voice and making this voice recognizable. And when I published my first collection, that was really personal. I felt like, okay, this is like the biggest step. And then it just didn't sell. It was like, okay, one more time. I knew how it feels, and it was like, and again, I knew it before. You have to be some kind of optimistic still, because why should you do something when you don't think it can work? But at the same time, that idea probably won't work. Those things have to coexist in your head. It hurts, but I know I can deal with it. Then I do the next thing and it will probably not work, and then I just do the next thing, and maybe sometime at some point of time it will work. It always comes down to how you make your definition. I can pay for my expenses, and that's more than many people can.
Do you know Elizabeth Gilbert? She wrote Eat, Pray, Love, for example.
I know Eat, Pray, Love, but I know I don't know her.
She wrote the book Big Magic, that was the one. And she was also talking about creativity and how creativity is like, oh, come, let's do this and that. And it's just like you're on this roller coaster and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then you're done your work and you're like, what is that? And creativity is just like, wanna do it again? And this is how it works, kind of.
And I learned the amplitude is not that high anymore, which is good, but which is also a bit sad, because if you don't have the lows or the big downs, then it's not going up that far. But I think in the end it's just healthy.
It's normal.
It is normal, and there are people after 30 years that don't come to this point, so it's not necessarily normal, but I'm feeling okay with it. The only thing that frustrates me from time to time is that I want to communicate this, but people just don't want to hear it. So it's not that people are not talking about it. I started like to speak out on those things on my Instagram. I know. And people were just like, I think you're a little crybaby.
Really?
They were like, I don't follow you for like the truth. You're just destroying my imagination of you living my dream. I think there are industries where no one speaks out, but in my special kind of thing, people don't want to hear the truth.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it also depends how you communicate this, but I'm pretty sure that you're not like...
I tried my best.
Yeah, because I also like to talk with other creatives and so on about money, things other people don't like to talk about. And I think we are all kind of in this together, or we all experience same things, and I think it's really good to talk about things like that.
I also think that, but at least in my industry it's difficult. People don't really want to hear that, and at some point, like once a year, I talk about how my year has been.
I will do that as well in January.
The ups and downs. Usually it's a bit more downs than ups when it comes to financial side. I would love to like give people a bit more insight. Artist insights. Yes. I try to not to be a mansplainer. Sometimes I see people start and I feel the urge like to give them a bit of a reality check without destroying their dreams, but just like a bit more reality. Sometimes they ask me and then I tell them, and then it's just doesn't make a difference. In the end, they don't want to hear that.
I mean, it depends. If you're in the same boat, I would say, okay, of course, if the person asks you, you can say something about that. But I'm also, there's even a quote about this, because people also like to give their opinion on something or wanting to discuss something with you, and you're just like, you're not doing this. You don't know how it is to do this kind of work or do this and that. I didn't ask you.
Yeah, I tried to avoid being that person. When they ask me, then I of course tell them, but while I tell them, I realize they don't want to hear it. They hope for a different kind of answer. But it's exciting what you say, because that's also one of the very annoying things about being self-employed, that people always know something that you should or could do. First, I have to convince them that it's really not as good as they thought. So they are like, don't you? Is it not like? And I'm like, no. The second thing then is, oh, you should go to a crafts fair. And I'm like, 10 fucking years I spent going to crafts fairs and it earned me nothing. Do you really think after 15 years I never came to a point where I thought like, oh, a crafts fair is a good idea? And they're like, oh, you need better marketing. And I'm like, I was in the AMG, so that's the tuning magazine from Mercedes-Benz magazine. And I had a title story. It was published in 7 languages, had over 1 million copies.
Holy shit,
And it sold me 1 bowl for 50 euros to Tasmania. So do you really think that I need more publications, that I need more publicity?
Most people, they mean it well.
Yes.
But sometimes it's just like...
I always try to like emphasize with those people, I still control my emotions. It's not that one person tells you that kind of things once a year. It's like, oh, you're like the 10th person this week, like having a good idea. And even, and I think that's a typical man thing, I have people sending me their ideas. Like, I once had this idea and I give it to you for free so you can make like money from it. And I was like, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think they are just doing it because if you would do it, then they could, in the end, they could say, this was my idea, where's my money?
People are just like weird sometimes.
Okay.
There are many opinions that you don't ask for. Sometimes it's like from the very inner circle, and that is when it really annoys me. So people from the outside, they don't know the situation. But sometimes it's like my longest friends that are like, really? So maybe you should try to have a online shop. And they're like, I have an online shop for 8 years. Then you maybe need to do like
YouTube.
We all know that YouTube is the easiest way to earn money.
I thought that back in the day, I thought like, start a YouTube channel, you will make money with YouTube videos. I mean, it depends what you're doing. But...
And I think there was this point, even with my crappy YouTube channel, I had 50 euros ad revenue.
Which is good.
Yeah, and it was like just 5 videos.
I watched your videos, and the videos are good.
Thank you. They are not often.
But they are really well made.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's back in the days it was easy to have this idea, but I think nowadays it should be pretty clear from the start that it doesn't work like that.
Let's change the topic a little bit. You had a little homework to do. Who is the creative person, the artist you want to give a shout out? What is their social media handle? And also if you could explain a little bit why did you choose them and what stands out in their work.
Maybe we start with the why first. You know that I have a love for Japan. There are many reasons to love Japan, but for me it's one of the things, aside from the obvious, the food, is the crafts. I really like Japanese crafts. There are, of course, those kind of living national treasures, like the best craftsmen that there are. This is something that's great. But in Japan, there are not only those like great and grand masters. There are millions, basically, or at least thousands of craftspeople that doing small beautiful
Yeah.
things. They have their own ideas. They make the best from small workshops. From their situation where they are in, they make things that are, even for me as a craftsman, hard to imagine. Wherever you go, like you have a shop that's just like 1 by 2 meters.
Yeah.
And there is the workshop included. When we went to Tokyo, there was a guy selling tiny wooden houses. Those houses were made from old wooden beams. There was paintings on them, and they have like a small glass that was like the chimney. He had this beautiful story, like every day you go out and you pick something and you put it inside and like have your little kind of zen moment. I love the big masters, the great masters, but this is something I love even more. And it's not even like they are like the highest skilled, or they, at least in their very narrow segment, they are very high skilled, but it's not that they're like universal skilled craftspeople. Long story short, I really love the small crafts of Japan, and there's like one of those things. So
oh, cute.
It's a little figurine of...
I will do a close-up.
Yeah, and I think it's probably a girl wearing a beanie hat. It's not something big. It's not something that shouts, I'm here. It's something nice and beautiful. This is done by Shifune26. She has Instagram and she does all those kind of beautiful little things. And this is wood turned. I think I could do it, but I wouldn't want to do it because it's like so tiny. It takes so much attention to details. I know many that are like her. I had a list of 20 people to choose from, and they are all equally good. Yeah, so she is one of those people.
Okay. Where in around Tokyo? Do you remember?
No, she's from outside.
Ah, okay.
But in Japan, they always have exhibitions. Most of them don't have their own shop or their workshop. Do people a favor and don't ask them to visit their workshop. So just look up for exhibition. At the time that we were in Tokyo, there were 2 exhibitions where you could see her work. It's definitely something you don't want to miss. She is just a representative of thousands of people that are doing things like this. And if you're into little things, then you can spend a lot of money in Japan.
Speaking of Japan, because I wanted to ask you about Japan, because I know that Japan also has a soft spot in your heart. Why should someone travel to Japan? And what are 2 experiences you would recommend doing in Japan?
Yeah, I think there are many reasons to go to Japan. Japan can be a great place for many different kinds of people. So you can be like a weeb, so be something like who is really into anime and those kind of things, and then Japan can be like the best place on earth. But you also can be something who is into crafts. So I'm not very into anime and those kind of things. I still like it, but it's not like I'm super into it. And
you didn't grow up that much with it.
I have like 2 or 3 series that I like. Or basically I'm not like in the realm of otaku culture. Of course, like anime, manga, all this kind of pop culture stuff is a great reason to visit Japan.
Video games.
Yes, and crafts is a great reason to visit Japan. If you're like into architecture, you have like the most modern things next to 100-year-old shrine or temple. Also, Japan is so easy to travel. If you want to experience a country that is 100% different from Western country, but still want to have an infrastructure working better than yours. I think people that come back from Japan have a different view on the Western world. So not everything is good in Japan,
Absolutely
but
not,
it changes the way that you look at our culture forever. If you're in none of the things I mentioned first, then it's just for that reason. You will never look at your own society the same way. When my wife and I go on vacation, we usually do it a bit different than most people. We don't have like the sightseeing spots that we go to. Many people have a list of spots they want to see and then they see this spot, hop on the next train, see this spot. We look for a nice little gallery, and the good thing in Japan is a nice little gallery comes seldomly alone. We just go somewhere where is something that we want to see and then we walk. We spend 2, 3, 4 hours walking back to the hotel or to the
Same.
next spot. I know many people like to do this on the bike, but I think it's too quick. Japan is really worth walking.
I said that to your wife as well. Just walking through the little tiny streets.
Yeah.
And just experiencing the
Yeah.
streets.
And we found so many gems just by we would never came across them.
I said the same.
Yeah. This is something I really recommend. Maybe do it a bit different. Look for something that you want to see and then just explore the area, take your time. One of the things that are a bit more difficult in Japan is that it's not the best country to visit on a budget.
I did that.
Yeah.
It is possible, but it depends on how much you are willing to sacrifice comfort.
But if you go on a budget, then don't save at the food. Because
Yeah.
go to like the worst hotel, but
Yeah.
go to a nice restaurant.
I did exactly this.
And the second thing is, it's not exactly what you're asked for. When you come to Japan, you realize that you will not really have interactions with locals, depending on where you're going. But imagine being in the United States, then you have like 10 interactions before you left the airport.
You know what's funny? I mean, okay, I stayed for 3 months in Japan,
Yeah.
but I was just about to say, because I was in New York, for example, compared to Japan, I had way more interactions with locals in Japan than in New York.
But you met people in a more like personal environment.
A shared house, for example, and
Yes.
so on, yeah.
The first time we spent 2.5 weeks and we only really talked to one person.
Wow, okay.
The second time we went there, we like were visiting friends in their homes. What even Japanese people don't experience that often. I understand that if you're really into Japan, you want to meet Japanese people. And it's more difficult than you think. Maybe in a bar, but not in like your daily life.
I made the experience that a Japanese man, this is also common, that he wanted to practice his English with me. He was coming to me and just talking to me randomly, and it was also like, what is going on? But I was also talking about that topic with Hauke. We made also an Artist Insights video and also one video on my Patreon. And he was talking about that. How do you make friends with the Japanese people? And he was also like, you don't.
Yes.
Depends.
Yeah, and this was where my answer was leading to. It takes time. It's worth the effort because it gives you a whole different experience of Japan. But I really recommend to not be too aggressive. For me, it's easy because I'm a craftsman. There are craftspeople in Japan. I connected with many of them in the last 8 years, and I did not connect them with like the idea in my head to somehow meet them. It was just like shared interest. And I spent a lot of time building up those relations. And basically 9 out of 10 interactions that we have, people that we met, came through those connections. And I think we made more friends in just 3 weeks than many expats in like 10 years. Reach out, be kind to others, show interest in what they are doing, build up like a natural kind of relationship with people. If you're planning to visit Japan more than just once, then try to make Japanese friends. And don't make it for the sake of visiting people, make it for the sake of making friends. If you manage to do that, then you can come back to Japan, not as a visitor, but as a friend. That's one of the most beautiful things. So
yeah, totally.
if you can do that, that's my recommendation. Come as a friend and not only as a tourist.
Okay, we have the last question. What would you like to give our creative viewers on the way who feel stuck and unhappy as an employee at their current job?
It's different for everyone. Give yourself time. If you want to become self-employed, maybe just start partly self-employed, that you get an idea. That's not what I did. Start it like as a side thing. In my experience, it's better to have like a soft entry. Start with an Etsy shop, like if you're a designer or something like this.
Also to do the thing to make money.
Yes, get to know your audience and be honest to yourself. If you realize, oh, that's kind of nice, but that's not what I imagined, and maybe my job isn't that bad. It's not a shame to try something and realize that's not the right thing for you. And maybe sometimes it's good just to have a dream that you can dream about, because once you do it, it's not a dream anymore. more. And if it works out, then you maybe can just reduce hours in your regular job, make it 50-50, 30 hours being employed and 30 hours of being self-employed. And then just step by step, always be like honest to yourself. And then maybe you will notice that it probably won't work, but you want to give it a try. Just do it. For most of the times you can go back. The other thing is something we talked about before. Other people always like want to sell you the American dream. But what they don't tell you is that 95% of the people are living the American nightmare. You will have to work hard, but you will also have to be honest and say, okay, this is enough. And don't let anyone tell you that everybody can make everything. That's just not true. It's not a nice truth, but it's still the truth. There is privilege involved. There is being on the right place in the right time. Something that worked out 10 years ago probably maybe will not work out now, or maybe it won't work out now, but it will or would in 20 years. And you can do like I did, try it for 10 years, but you have to come to a point where you're like, okay, it's not my fault. Be kind to yourself. Work hard, but realize the point where you don't have to work even harder. Then just be easy on yourself. Of course, you can get mentally ill and grow through your mental illness if you don't have to go down that road.
If your body clearly is showing you something that something is off, then listen to your body.
Get help. If you're feeling mentally sick, feeling that something is off, something is not the way it should be, then just ask for help. Don't be like this kind of person who thinks I have to do it on my own. This of course is also privilege, but in many developed countries at least, there is the chance to ask for help, for professional help. And if there's a possibility, then get it.
Okay, Franz, thank you.
Yeah, thank you
so much for participating in this format. Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. I really appreciate your time. Speaking of giving someone your time. Speaking of giving, give this video a like, comment down below, share it with others, that more people get to see this video and that my channel can grow too. If you want to support this channel, I have a Patreon and I would love to welcome you in our friend community. My Patreon link is in the description. Also, everything about Franz is also in the description. I also have an online store with products that have my art on it. Link is also in the description. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons for your support. Mwah! I will see you in my next video. Bye!
Bye!